neutral bus bar in a subpanel is typically connected to the ground bus bar and the enclosure of the subpanel. This bonding ensures that the neutral and ground conductors are at the same electrical potential. This is important for several reasons. Firstly, safety. If a fault occurs, such as a short circuit between a live wire and the ground, the bonding ensures that the ground wire carries the fault current safely back to the source, preventing electric shock or fire. Secondly, voltage stability. Bonding the neutral and ground helps maintain a stable voltage level throughout the electrical system. Thirdly, code compliance. The National Electrical Code, also known as NEC, requires the neutral bus bar to be bonded to the enclosure and ground bus in both main and subpanels. In the case of the detached garage subpanel, the neutral bus bar is most likely not bonded to the ground and enclosure because the garage is isolated from the main grounding electrode system, also known as GES, of the house. The grounding electrode system is typically installed at the main electrical service entrance and consists of a grounding electrode, such as a copper rod driven into the earth, and a grounding wire that connects the electrode to the main panel. When a detached garage is built, it is typically not connected to the grounding electrode system of the house. This means that the garage has its own separate grounding system consisting of a grounding rod and a grounding wire that connects it to the garage subpanel. By not bonding the neutral and ground in the garage subpanel, it ensures that the grounding system of the garage is isolated from the grounding system of the house. This is important to prevent ground loops, which can cause interference and voltage fluctuations. To pass the inspection, you will need to install a grounding electrode at the garage and connect it to the grounding bus bar in the garage subpanel. This will establish a dedicated grounding system for the garage and ensure that the ground and neutral are bonded properly. You should also consult with a licensed electrician to verify that your electrical installation meets all applicable code requirements. Grounding and bonding are critical aspects of electrical safety. The grounding system provides a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source, allowing overcurrent protection devices like circuit breakers or fuses to quickly clear the fault. Bonding ensures that all metallic parts of an electrical system are at the same electrical potential, minimizing the risk of electric shock. The NEC provides detailed guidelines on grounding and bonding requirements, covering various scenarios and applications. Section 250.4 discusses general requirements for grounding and bonding, emphasizing the need for effective ground fault current paths and the minimization of voltage differences. Section 250.24 covers grounding requirements for separately derived systems such as generators or transformers. Section 250.30 outlines grounding electrode system requirements, specifying the types of electrodes that can be used, such as ground rods, ground rings, and metal water pipes. Section 250.50 discusses the grounding electrode conductor, which connects the grounding electrode to the electrical system. It specifies the size and material requirements for this conductor. Section 250.92 covers bonding of metal enclosures and raceways to ensure electrical continuity and provide a path for fault current. Section 250.104 addresses bonding of interior metal water piping systems and other metal components to the grounding electrode system. It's crucial to understand these requirements and apply them correctly to ensure a safe and compliant electrical installation. Grounding electrodes play a fundamental role in providing a path for fault currents to return to the source. The NEC specifies several types of acceptable grounding electrodes, including ground rods, ground rings, metal water pipes, and concrete encased electrodes, also known as UFA grounds. Ground rods are typically made of copper or copper-clad steel and are driven into the earth to a depth specified by the NEC, typically 8 feet. The size and number of ground rods required depend on the soil resistivity and the desired grounding resistance. Ground rings consist of a bare copper conductor encircling a building or structure and buried directly in the earth. They provide a more effective grounding path than single ground rods, especially in areas with high soil resistivity. Metal water pipes can be used as grounding electrodes if they meet certain requirements, such as being in direct contact with the earth for at least 10 feet. However, the use of metal water pipes as grounding electrodes is becoming less common due to the increasing use of non-metallic pipes. Concrete encased electrodes, or U for grounds, consist of a bare copper conductor encased in concrete that is in direct contact with the earth. They are commonly used in new construction and provide an excellent grounding path due to the large surface area of contact with the earth. The selection of the appropriate grounding electrode depends on factors such as soil conditions, building type, and local code requirements. It's essential to consult with a qualified electrician to determine the best grounding electrode for a specific application. Bonding is the process of connecting all metallic parts of an electrical system to create a low impedance path for fault current. The purpose of bonding is to ensure that all metallic parts are at the same electrical potential, minimizing the risk of electric shock. The NEC requires bonding of metal enclosures, raceways equipment, and other metallic components that are likely to become energized. Bonding is typically achieved using bonding jumpers, which are conductors that connect the metallic parts together. The size of the bonding jumpers depends on the size of the circuit conductors and the type of equipment being bonded. Bonding jumpers must be securely connected to the metallic parts using methods approved by the NEC, such as bolted connections, clamps, or exothermic welding. In addition to bonding the metallic parts of an electrical system, the NEC also requires bonding of interior metal water piping systems and other metal components that are likely to become energized. This is to prevent voltage differences between these components and the electrical system, which could create a shock hazard. Effective bonding is essential for electrical safety and proper system operation. It helps to minimize the risk of electric shock, reduce voltage fluctuations, and ensure that overcurrent protection devices operate correctly. Ground loops can occur when there are multiple ground paths in an electrical system, creating a circulating current. These circulating currents can cause interference, voltage fluctuations, and even equipment damage. Ground loops are more likely to occur in systems with multiple grounding points, such as detached buildings or interconnected electrical systems. To prevent ground loops, it's important to have a single point of grounding for each electrical system. This means that the neutral conductor should only be bonded to ground at the service entrance or at a separately derived system, such as a generator or transformer. In detached buildings, the neutral conductor should not be bonded to ground at the subpanel. Instead, the subpanel should be grounded through a separate grounding electrode system, as described earlier. In interconnected electrical systems, it's important to ensure that the grounding systems are properly coordinated to prevent ground loops. This may involve the use of isolation transformers or other techniques to break the ground loop path. Diagnosing and resolving ground loop problems can be challenging, as they often manifest as intermittent or subtle symptoms. However, by carefully analyzing the grounding system and using appropriate troubleshooting techniques, it's possible to identify and eliminate ground loops. Voltage stability is essential for the proper operation of electrical equipment. Voltage fluctuations can cause equipment malfunction, reduce performance, and even damage. Grounding and bonding play a crucial role in maintaining voltage stability by providing a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source. This helps to minimize voltage drops and ensure that the voltage remains within acceptable limits. In addition to grounding and bonding, other factors that can affect voltage stability include the quality of the power supply, the size and type of conductors, and the load in the electrical system. It's important to address these factors to ensure that the voltage remains stable under all operating conditions. Proper voltage regulation is also important for voltage stability. Voltage regulators are devices that automatically adjust the voltage to maintain it within a specified range. They are commonly used in applications where voltage fluctuations are a concern, such as in sensitive electronic equipment or in areas with unreliable power grids. The National Electrical Code is a comprehensive set of standards for electrical installations. It is developed and published by the National Fire Protection Association, also known as NFPA, and is widely adopted throughout the United States. The NEC is updated every 3 years to reflect the latest advancements in electrical technology and safety practices. The NEC covers a wide range of topics, including wiring methods, overcurrent protection, grounding and bonding, and equipment installation. It provides detailed requirements for electrical installations in residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. Compliance with the NEC is essential for ensuring electrical safety and preventing electrical hazards. Electrical inspectors use the NEC as a guide when inspecting electrical installations to ensure that they meet the minimum safety requirements. The NEC is not a law itself, but it is often adopted by state and local governments as part of their building codes. This means that compliance with the NEC is legally required in many jurisdictions. The NEC is a complex document, and it's important to have a thorough understanding of its requirements to ensure that electrical installations are safe and compliant. Electrical contractors, electricians, and other professionals working in the electrical industry must be familiar with the NEC and its application. The NEC is organized into chapters, articles, and sections, making it easy to find information on specific topics. The chapters cover broad areas of electrical installations, such as wiring methods, equipment, and special occupancies. The articles provide more detailed requirements for specific types of installations or equipment. The sections provide specific rules and guidelines for particular aspects of an installation or equipment. The NEC also includes tables and figures that provide additional information and guidance. These tables and figures are often used to determine conductor sizes, overcurrent protection requirements, and other design parameters. The NEC is constantly evolving to keep pace with changes in electrical technology and safety practices. The NFPA publishes revisions to the NEC every 3 years, and it's important to stay up to date with the latest changes to ensure that electrical installations are safe and compliant. Consulting with a licensed electrician is crucial for ensuring the safety and compliance of electrical installations. Licensed electricians have the knowledge, skills, and experience to design, install, and maintain electrical systems in accordance with the NEC and local codes. They can assess the specific needs of a building or project and recommend the appropriate electrical solutions. Licensed electricians are also trained to identify and correct electrical hazards, such as faulty wiring, overloaded circuits, and improper grounding. They can perform electrical inspections to ensure that existing electrical systems are safe and compliant. Hiring a licensed electrician can help to avoid costly mistakes and ensure that electrical work is done safely and correctly. It can also provide peace of mind knowing that the electrical system is in good hands. When hiring an electrician, it's important to verify that they are properly licensed and insured. This will protect you from liability in case of accidents or damages. It's also a good idea to get multiple bids from different electricians to ensure that you are getting a fair price. Before hiring an electrician, ask for references and check their online reviews. This will give you an idea of their reputation and the quality of their work. Be sure to discuss the scope of the work with the electrician in detail and get a written estimate before starting the project. This will help to avoid misunderstandings and ensure that you are both on the same page. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it's always best to hire a licensed electrician to do the work. Electricity can be dangerous, and it's important to take all necessary precautions to avoid electric shock or fire. Here are some additional points to consider regarding the specific situation with a detached garage subpanel. The reason the inspector failed the installation because the neutral was bonded to the ground of the detached garage subpanel is due to the requirements of the National Electrical Code. The NEC specifies that the neutral conductor should only be bonded to ground at one point in the electrical system, which is typically at the service entrance or at a separately derived system such as a generator or transformer. Bonding the neutral to ground at multiple locations can create a parallel path for neutral current, which can lead to circulating currents, voltage fluctuations, and even equipment damage. This is why the NEC prohibits bonding the neutral to ground at subpanels in detached buildings. In the case of the detached garage, the neutral conductor is already bonded to ground at the main service panel. Bonding it again at the garage subpanel would create a second ground path, which could lead to the problems described above. To correct the situation, the neutral conductor must be isolated from the ground at the garage subpanel. This means that the neutral bus bar should not be bonded to the enclosure or to the grounding bus bar. The grounding bus bar should be connected to a separate grounding electrode system, such as a ground rod, as described earlier. The grounding electrode system should be independent of the grounding electrode system at the main service panel. This will ensure that the garage subpanel has its own dedicated grounding system and that there is no parallel path for neutral current. It's important to note that the requirements for grounding and bonding can vary depending on the specific application and the local codes. It's always best to consult with a licensed electrician to ensure that electrical installations are safe and compliant. In the specific case mentioned, the pool subpanel feeding the garage subpanel does not change the fundamental requirement. The garage subpanel still needs its own dedicated grounding electrode system, and the neutral must not be bonded to ground at the garage subpanel. The pool subpanel should be wired with 4 conductors, 2 hots, a neutral, and a ground, and the ground conductor should be connected to the grounding bus bar in both the pool subpanel and the garage subpanel. The neutral conductor should be isolated from the ground at both subpanels. In summary, the key to understanding the grounding and bonding requirements for detached garage subpanels is to remember that the neutral conductor should only be bonded to ground at one point in the electrical system, which is typically at the service entrance. The garage subpanel needs its own dedicated grounding electrode system, and the neutral must be isolated from the ground at the subpanel. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant.